my husband and I recently decided to elope. After months of trying to plan a big, traditional wedding, we finally admitted to ourselves that it just wasn't what we wanted. Thankfully, my side of the family was completely supportive from the start. I've always had a solid relationship with them, and they totally understood where I was coming from. No questions, no drama, just love. His family, though? Not so much. Especially his mom and his twin sister. Before his mom got remarried and had a few more kids, it was just the three of them for years. Because of that, both his mother and sister still rely on him heavily, emotionally, financially, you name it. They weren't upset that we got married. They were upset that we skipped the party. They were looking forward to the perks, a weekend away, dressing up, us footing the bill for a fancy hotel, expensive food, and unlimited drinks. That gives you a good idea of where their priorities are, not with us, but with what they could get out of the event. Honestly, the whole thing just screamed entitlement. We eloped in early July, and since we already had a European vacation booked for 1 week, we decided to stretch it into 2 weeks, from July 25th to August 9th. At first, we were planning to board our pug and ask a neighbor to keep an eye on the condo. But with us being gone that long, we figured it might be better to have someone stay in the apartment. That's when my sister-in-law stepped in. She offered to house sit for us. She loved our dog, we trusted her, and she'd be way cheaper than a pet sitter or Airbnb-style setup. It sounded like the perfect solution. Right before the trip, my husband mentioned that his sister was thinking about moving from Springfield to Chicago, where we live, and she planned to job hunt while staying at our place. I didn't see a problem with it. She'd always been kind of inconsistent with work, and I figured a change of scenery might be good for her. At no point did we talk about her staying longer than our trip, and there definitely wasn't any mention of her needing to move in permanently. So, the day we leave, she shows up at Union Station with 3 giant suitcases. I was already flustered trying to get everything together, so I didn't think much of it, just figured she was a heavy packer. Looking back, that should have been my first red flag. The trip itself was amazing. We checked in a few times, and everything back home seemed great. She sent updates, the apartment was clean, and our pug was still his usual lazy self. When we got back late on August 9th, everything looked fine. She'd done a good job, and we were happy to pay her for it. The next morning, on the 10th, I was off work. I didn't see her before bed, and she hadn't asked for a ride back to the train or mentioned leaving, so I just assumed she had things handled and had gone back to Springfield. I went to bed without bringing it up. I went to work on Tuesday like usual and came home to find her parked on my couch, eating and watching TV like she lived there. I called my husband immediately. That's when he told me she planned to stay a few more weeks. Apparently, she'd told him she had a job interview lined up and wanted to continue her search from our place. If nothing panned out, she'd head back. I was pissed that he gave her permission without even running it by me first. But when it comes to his mom and sister, he's got no spine, he knows it, and he admits it. I told him I'd agree to 1 more week, but only if she genuinely focused on job hunting. Well, fast forward to the weekend of August 15th. In just a few days, she'd completely taken over the condo. The living room became her territory. She ate all our groceries and then had the nerve to complain when we were out of food. She declared the guest bathroom hers and said none of our guests could use it. She even brought over some random guy, had loud sex with him while my husband and I were trying to eat dinner, and constantly made little jabs at my husband, stories about how I run the household and how he used to be so different when he was younger. I finally snapped. I told my husband I couldn't deal with it anymore. He agreed, but admitted again that when it came to his sister and mom, he'd probably cave under pressure. So I took it upon myself to confront her. I sat her down and said, "Look, you're family, but you've totally overstepped. This arrangement isn't working anymore, and I need to know when you're planning to leave." She immediately got defensive and said my husband told her she could stay as long as she needed. She also said she wasn't planning to go back to Springfield because her relationship with their mom was toxic and codependent. Then she basically threatened me, saying that if I forced her to leave, my husband would turn against me. I made it crystal clear that I wasn't playing games. I told her she had 1 week, and if she thought she could manipulate my husband into choosing her over me, she had another thing coming. He's starting to see through her act, and if she pushes it, she'll expose herself. She didn't take it well. Things got tense but quiet. She had a job interview scheduled for Monday and barely acknowledged me after that. My husband said it went well, and she expected an offer. He also mentioned she brought up staying longer, but for once, he stood his ground and told her no, unless something extreme happened, she'd have to leave. If she got the job, we'd help her find a place, but she couldn't keep staying with us. We even bought her an Amtrak ticket for Saturday morning. And wouldn't you know it, something extreme happened the day before she was supposed to leave. On Friday, I got a text from my husband saying, "We need to talk when you get home." I'm really worried you relapsed. A little background: I've been in recovery for kleptomania since I was a kid. I used to steal not because I needed anything, but because I couldn't stop myself. I've been clean for over 3 years, ever since my husband and I started dating. I've done years of therapy, and I've been completely open about this struggle with both my husband, his mom, and even his sister. Turns out, his mom called him that morning. She said his sister had called her crying the night before, claiming she noticed some of her clothes were missing and one of her rings. She apparently went into our bedroom, searched through my things, and found the missing ring on my dresser. She also went through my closet and found some of her clothes. They told my husband they weren't mad and wouldn't call the cops. They understood things had been stressful lately with work and with his sister staying with us, but they were worried and thought I needed help. His sister had also found a bunch of clothes with price tags still attached hidden deep in my closet, mixed in with her own stuff. She and his mom both believed I'd started shoplifting again and stealing from her. But I didn't relapse. I didn't buy those clothes, and I sure as hell didn't steal from her. Either she bought them herself and just made it look suspicious, or, and I honestly believe this, she planted them to make me look guilty. When I got home, there was basically a full-on intervention happening in my own living room. She'd laid out the ring, the clothes, and a pile of stuff she claimed I'd stolen. My husband looked crushed. He genuinely believed I'd slipped. His sister jumped in and offered to stay with us longer so she could support me through recovery. She's a CADC certified alcohol and drug counselor and acted like she could help. And my husband? He was wrecked. He blamed himself for the relapse, thinking the stress of hosting his sister was what triggered me. He took all the blame off her and put it squarely on himself. Meanwhile, I was just sitting there in shock. The last 36 hours have felt like a bad dream. Every time she gets a moment alone with him, she plants more seeds of doubt. She'll comment on my clothes, saying they're a little expensive for someone on your salary, or make sly remarks about how recovery is tricky and relapses happen. And I can tell it's working. I see it in his face. He's starting to wonder, is she right? Am I stealing again? I've tried to explain everything to my husband, and I think he finally believes me now. But even so, he just can't wrap his head around the idea that his own sister might have framed me. He knows both his mom and sister have their issues, but in his mind, they'd never deliberately hurt him, especially not by coming after me. To me, it's crystal clear. His mom and sister have always had a way of twisting him around their fingers. If I hadn't been in the picture, I'm sure his sister would have just moved in without any resistance. But since I wasn't playing along, she had to stir up some chaos to get what she wanted. Now I feel stuck, not just with her, but with my mother-in-law too. I truly believe my husband and I can move past this, but I'm worried it's going to come at the cost of his relationship with his family, particularly his mom and sister. Edit. I realize my original questions weren't very clear, so here they are. How do I approach this long-term with my husband, especially given the history with his sister? I'm nervous this is going to keep being a problem in our relationship. How do I make it clear, gently but firmly, that he needs to choose between protecting our marriage or enabling them? And is it even worth it to defend myself over the stealing accusation anymore, or do I just let it go? Update: my sister-in-law, 29F, is trying to turn my husband, 29M, against me, 28F. Thanks to everyone who gave advice. After reading through the responses and giving it a lot of thought, I decided enough was enough. I gave my husband an ultimatum: either his sister leaves tonight, or I walk away. I wasn't about to let myself get pushed to the bottom of the ladder behind his manipulative family. He chose me. We both knew it wasn't going to go down quietly. To soften the blow, we agreed to offer to pay for a hotel room and her train ticket. Maybe she'd accept it and just go. I showed my husband the Reddit thread where I shared everything. He didn't say a word, just got up, walked to the guest room, and started packing all her stuff. He came back and apologized to me. I told him point blank, this isn't just about his sister trying to squat in our condo, this is about how far she's willing to go to divide us. If we don't deal with it now, it's going to rip our marriage apart. He agreed. He said he's ready to go to therapy with me and on his own if needed. He doesn't want to lose what we have over this. We also had a really honest talk about my recovery. I told him that if I had truly relapsed, it wouldn't have been limited to a few shirts. There would have been random junk piling up everywhere. That's how kleptomania works, you lose control. He really listened, and for the first time, he seemed to truly understand how manipulative his sister had been. Her whole supportive sister with addiction training act was just another tactic to keep herself planted in our lives. Later that Sunday, she let herself into the condo like everything was normal. The moment she saw her bags, my husband shoved them into the hallway and shut the door behind her. When she tried to grab them, he closed the door on her too. I didn't interfere, he needed to do this without me. I could hear her crying in the hallway. He offered to get her a hotel room and pay for her ticket home, but she started yelling at him instead. It wasn't long before she was sobbing so loudly I'm sure the entire floor could hear her. I could make out some of what she said, accusing him of abandoning her, saying he had to stop letting me control him, claiming she was his real family. It took everything I had not to go out there and scream at her. But my husband reminded me she wants me to snap. That's her game. Eventually, one of our neighbors had enough and texted me to say he'd called the cops to handle the noise. When the Chicago PD showed up, they spoke to her first since she was the one sitting in the hallway. She told them she lived there and wanted me arrested for kicking her out and for stealing her things. She claimed I took her purse, a ring, and a few outfits, and that I was also shoplifting from stores. Thankfully, I'd been prepared for this. I calmly explained everything to the officers and walked them through what was really going on, including the previous incident with the planted clothes. My husband backed me up completely, telling them she'd been trying to set me up. He made it clear that this was a family issue, not a criminal one. The officers basically told her she was walking a fine line with filing a false report and causing a disturbance. She claimed she had nowhere to go, but then admitted she lived in Springfield and had just come to house sit. That little detail really worked against her when it came to claiming she had residency. Since she said she had no money and no way to get home, the police gave us two options: either let her stay one more night while we arranged transportation, or drive her back ourselves immediately. But the only way they could ensure she'd be gone by morning was if we drove her ourselves. My husband and I talked it over. We knew if she stayed another night, she'd find a way to twist it and drag things out again. So we decided to drive her home right then and there. She agreed without much fuss. I think once the cops got involved, she realized her plan had fallen apart. The drive was brutal. She cried for the first hour, laying the guilt on heavy. Said my husband was abandoning her, that I was trying to come between them, that they were twins and had a bond I'd never understand, and even threw in the fact that I didn't want kids, as if that somehow made me less worthy of him. I'll admit, I lost my cool. I said some things I'm not proud of, called her delusional, stupid, even insane. Not my finest moment. But I'd hit my limit. Eventually, my husband put on an audiobook, and we both tuned her out. She ended up falling asleep, and we were left sitting there in complete silence, both of us just wrecked from the stress. We pulled up to her mom's house around 2 a.m. She got out without incident. But then, as we were about 15 minutes into the drive home, my husband's phone rang. It was his mom. She told him I was a cancer on their family and said he needed to finally stand up to me and choose them. She said I was controlling and that she was done watching him be manipulated. He told her calmly but firmly that he was choosing me. That he was sorry she saw it as an either-or situation, but she was the one making it that way, not him. On the ride back, he finally opened up. He told me things I'd never heard before. How growing up, his sister regularly abused him mentally and physically. And every time he told his mom, she'd blame him. He said he always believed putting distance between them would be enough to heal, but now he sees it wasn't. He realizes he might need to cut ties completely, not just with his mom and sister, but with his half-siblings and stepdad too. I hate that it took this entire ordeal to bring that truth to light. It breaks my heart. We both took the day off work. We stayed in, watched some Rick and Morty, ate amazing pizza, and made it to a pretty productive therapy session. Despite how much pain this weekend brought, I feel like we're on the right track. There's hope for us. When we finally turned his phone back on, there were a bunch of missed calls and texts, apologies from both his sister and his mom. I guess now that their plan failed, they're switching tactics. We've talked seriously about him going fully no contact with both of them. I suggested we change our phone numbers to cut off any further drama. He's a bit hesitant, he worries about emergencies. But honestly, I don't want to leave any door open for them to crawl back through. I believe this is the right move. No more chances. No more manipulation. Lately, I've been thinking about finding a specialist, a therapist who really understands toxic family dynamics, to help my husband work through all of this. But honestly, I don't even know where to start or what kind of questions I should be asking. With family trauma this deep, what's the first step? Where do you even begin? Update number 2, it's now been 2 weeks since we removed my sister-in-law from our home, and wow, what a wild ride it's been. We managed to settle back into something close to normal. For a few days, at least, life was peaceful. We went back to our routines, continued our couples therapy, and got my husband set up with his own therapist. We decided against changing our phone numbers, mostly for practical reasons. Instead, we agreed to block anyone who couldn't respect our boundaries. And for a while, it actually worked. That is, until this past weekend. On Friday, my husband got a call from his 16-year-old younger brother, who still lives at home. He called to give my husband a heads up Their mom and sister were heading to Chicago to visit family and had decided to bring him along, conveniently. Even he admitted it felt like a trap. And he was right. By the time this happened, I was already out of town for a bachelorette weekend, leaving my husband home alone, completely unprepared to deal with any of this. I couldn't be back until Sunday. On Saturday, the younger brother called again, asking if they could hang out. He said they had a few hours to kill and just happened to be in our neighborhood. So my husband said yes. The two of them spent a few hours at our place. They played video games, ordered takeout, just some good old-fashioned brother bonding. At some point, his brother admitted he didn't believe what their mom and sister had been saying. He pulled up screenshots of their social media posts, which were filled with disgusting comments about me. One of them read, "Well, that harlot has managed to brainwash my son again. Please pray that Jesus delivers him from the devil he lays with. She is nothing short of a cancer on my life, and I fear this stress will make me physically ill. Pray for us all." And this woman isn't even religious. My husband somehow kept his cool. After their visit, both his mom and sister tried to come up to the condo, but he met them outside and made sure they stayed downstairs. That's when his sister dropped the bomb. She said she was going through a deep depression and had recently miscarried. She claimed she needed him, her twin, to support her emotionally. Naturally, he felt overwhelmed with guilt. Neither of us had any idea she had been pregnant, and he looked so torn up when I got home Sunday. The tension between us was thick. We ended up having a huge fight. I was furious. The Facebook posts alone pushed me to my limit. He agreed that his mom had crossed the line, but claimed the ones from his sister were more subtle, passive-aggressive at worst. He didn't think they warranted the same level of outrage. I disagreed. Strongly. She started all of this. Whatever trauma she's been through doesn't excuse what she did, the manipulation, the accusations, the emotional warfare. And to be honest, I don't even know if she was telling the truth about the miscarriage. She's already lied so many times. Why believe her now? The fight got ugly. He called me cold and insensitive. I called him naive and manipulated. And we bickered loudly, which was unusual for us. Normally, our biggest fights are over Game of Thrones rankings. We did talk things through the next day. We made up. But the tension was still lingering, and it only got worse when he told me that he had texted her just to check in. I felt like we were slipping backwards. After everything we went through, after he said I was his priority, it suddenly felt like I was behind her again. And that's not something I'm willing to accept. I keep asking myself, how do I handle this? Should we jump back into couples therapy right away? We both think it could help, but maybe not this very moment. Do I tell him we need to go completely no contact again until we figure things out? Part of me feels guilty. If she really did have a miscarriage and she's struggling, I don't want to cut off her only support system. But I also need to protect my marriage. Another part of me just wants to confront her directly, maybe even record the conversation. I know her. She wouldn't be able to resist gloating. My marriage is the most important thing in my life. I need to find a way to make that clear to my husband without sounding like I'm being selfish. Update number 3: Helen is dead. And no, I'm not joking. That's not some messed up attempt at humor. Helen, my mother-in-law, is actually gone. She died this past Saturday. We won't have the full story until the toxicology report comes back, but from what we know, it looks like she took the wrong combo of medications and passed in her sleep. It's surreal. My husband is grieving, of course. He's heartbroken. But honestly, he's handling it better than I expected. His sister is the one handling all the funeral arrangements. We're still debating whether or not we should attend. A big part of me doesn't want to go at all. After everything she did to me, the lies, the cruelty, the manipulation, why should I stand at her funeral pretending to mourn? But then I look at my husband, and I see the hurt in his eyes. I see the pain in his siblings. And I realize, as awful as she was to me, she still had a few brief moments where she acted like a mom to them. That's something. Still, I can't lie, I'm angry. I'm angry that she got to die quietly in her sleep after years of causing chaos. She made our lives hell. And now she's just gone. It feels like the universe let her off easy.